Hello and welcome to RPA Developer Production Ready Essentials training. In this video, we will cover using if statements in UiPath Studio. The activities inside workflows are generally executed from top to bottom, in the order that they appear or according to the arrows in the flowchart. Control flow activities, however, break up the flow of execution by employing decision-making, looping, and branching, thus enabling your process to conditionally execute certain blocks of activities. In this lesson, we'll learn about the if activity, which is used in sequences, the flow decision activity, the equivalent of the if activity, which is used in flowcharts, and the VB if operator. They enable your workflow to take one of two different courses of action, depending on whether a specified condition is met or not. For this demonstration, consider the following business scenario. For reporting purposes, we need to find out if the reporting year is a leap year or not. Let's start with the logic. A year is a leap year if it meets the following conditions. The year is evenly divisible by 4. If the year can be evenly divided by 100, it is not a leap year, unless the year is also evenly divisible by 400. As for the workflow design, we'll build a simple project that asks the user for a year, checks if the conditions are met, and then prints a message to indicate if it's a leap year or not. Let's see how we can use an if activity in a sequence workflow. We'll add a sequence. Name it leap year sequence and add an annotation for it as well. Next, we'll add an input dialog activity that we'll use to get the year from the user. Let's fill in the input properties for the activity. Now let's create an int32 variable and add it to the result field of the input dialog. Next, let's add an if activity to our workflow. Now this activity contains 3 sections: condition, then, and else. The condition field needs to contain a Boolean expression based on which either the then section or the else section is executed. Remember the conditions we've mentioned earlier. A leap year is evenly divisible by 4, but if it is evenly divisible by 100, it also needs to be divisible by 400. This is the VB.NET expression that we need to use to set the conditions. In UiPath workflows, we use VB.NET syntax. Check the link below the video for more information regarding expressions in VB.NET. Now that we've entered the expression in the condition field of the if activity, we'll add 2 message box activities. One on the then branch with the message "it is a leap year," and another one on the else branch with the message "it is not a leap year." Let's save the workflow, run it, and test with a few values. And that looks good. For the next step, let's develop a workflow with the same logic, but instead of a sequence, we'll use a flowchart. We'll click New Flowchart in the ribbon menu. We'll name it Leap Year Flowchart and add an annotation as well. Let's copy the input dialog activity from the previous workflow and set it as a start node. This will make it the first activity to run in the workflow. Now let's define the variable year of type int32. Next, we'll add a flow decision activity. Connect the input dialog activity to it and enter the same expression as in the previous workflow in the condition field. Now, let's add the 2 message boxes and connect them to the true and false branches of the flow decision. And it's time to run the workflow and see what we've got. Great! We just solved the same business scenario using the same logic, but 2 types of workflows. In practice, because sequences have a simple linear representation that flows from top to bottom, they are best suited for simple scenarios, when activities follow each other. As a general guideline, avoid using sequences when you need to include multiple nested if statements. Flowcharts are best suited for showcasing important decision points within a process. A sequence would do just fine to solve this scenario. Now that we've seen how to use the if and flow decision activities, there's one more tip that we want to share. The VB if operator can be very useful for minor local conditions or data computing, and it can sometimes reduce a whole block to a single activity. Let's create a new sequence and use the VB if operator to solve the same business case. We'll name it Leap Year Sequence and add an annotation. We'll copy the input dialog activity, create the year variable, and also a new variable called message of type string. Next, add an assign activity. Enter this expression in the value field, and enter the message variable in the to field. Finally, add a message box activity and enter the message variable in the text property. And let's run it again. Great! And that was all for this lesson. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.